Hello everyone, and thank you very much for coming to our second annual TED event. Today we have many student speakers here. They're not seasoned professional speakers who have practiced this for years and are experts at it. But one thing sets them apart. They had the initiative to join this club and this journey with us, to delve into the world of public speaking and get the confidence they need and the tools they need to share their ideas as confident citizens of this planet. Our long journey of public speaking workshops and speech writing workshops and analyzing TED speeches culminates today with our annual event. For you, we have Sarah Chen, Rishi Wahi, Elijah Araya, Carol Luo, Bolurin Ojofeitimi, Natalie, Osmond, and Brian Ross here to present their speeches to you today. We will have the first 4 speeches, and then we will have pizza for dinner, which will be outside. And then after dinner, we will culminate with our remaining 3 speeches. We hope you enjoy the program. And now I would like to introduce my co-chair and MC, Maya Robles.
Thank you, Ron. No, it's been a great year. The amount of effort and time that these guys have put into researching, writing, fine-tuning, practicing their speeches is really going to shine through tonight. Tonight our theme is Ideas Worth Sharing, and it's at this time that I would like to recognize and thank our club advisor, Dr. Estrada, for all of the effort that he has put into this conference. And I'll hand it on to him now.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you, Ram. Welcome everyone to our TED event. Let me start by saying how incredibly proud I am of all the club members and the club leaders. So please, let's give them a round of applause. You know, public speaking always ranks like at the top of most people's fears. And here they are, ready to face that fear, and not only that, but to transform it into an enjoyable evening for all of us. I'm just very lucky that they actually made me part of this TED Club adventure. You know, I knew this year at Cooper, and I remember, you know, on the very first day, there was a student who approached me and said, I watched your TED Talk. I just gave a TEDx talk last year, and the student said, like, I watched it. Would you like to be the advisor for our TED Club? And I said, yes, of course. The very next day, that student came with a detailed plan of every single session leading up to this event. Not only that, but he gave me specific feedback on my TED Talk. He had watched it and analyzed it. The student is one of our club leaders, Ram. And shortly after, Ram introduced me to the other club leader, Maya, who is a very strong communicator, an amazing artist, and an accomplished writer. So please. I knew then that the club would not be in better hands. And it's been an incredible journey. It's been so exciting to see the amazing job that Ram and Maya have done with the club. So I hope that you enjoy this evening of ideas worth sharing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Estrada, for all your guidance and those kind words as well. We are now going to start our evening of ideas worth sharing. First up, we have Sarah Chen, a senior at the John Cooper School, who will present her TED Talk on how to fight procrastination. Please welcome her on stage.
Hey, hi everyone, I'm Sarah Chen, and today I'm here to talk about procrastination. So first, let me ask a question. How many of you would consider yourself to be a procrastinator sometimes? Okay, well, please look around you. So now you probably understand why I'm here to talk about this topic, something so relevant to all of us. See, procrastination sometimes causes a lot of troubles in our life. For me, I can never forget that summer after 8th grade leading into 9th grade, and our teacher gave us a lot of summer reading in packets to do, which I did not get started until the 5 days before school started. I remember those 5 days were very productive, and I was working a lot, writing a lot. My hands really sore, and that stressful feeling that just makes me remember for a long time. So after that, I really wanted to because I always wanted to know how to conquer procrastination. Then I did research, and now I'm here today to share what I found with you. So in order to deal with procrastination, I first want to understand what is causing it, what's going on. So after research, I found procrastination is mostly caused by pleasure principle, which is our human natural tendency to avoid stress and avoid difficulty and to seek pleasure. This can lead to impulsive decisions, which is like decision without deeper reasoning. So another reason is perfectionism, which is basically the fear and the tendency to negatively evaluate one's performance and outcomes and the fear of the judging by others. So it's not hard to see how our anxiety and fear can impact our ability to execute our decisions. Then how do we deal with these challenges? In a really helpful document I found written by Dr. Shayla Rendell from Harvard University, she points out 5 pieces of advice that I think will be really helpful to you. Okay, so the first one is called the even so approach. What does this mean? It's like there are many situations when we have little time, like say 5 or 10 minutes here and there. It's really easy for us to say, well, I only have 10 minutes, so I can't really get anything done. So let me pull out my phone and start playing games, just to kill the time. And due to the pleasure principle, which I explained earlier, this is a very likely thought that many of us have experienced before. So now instead of saying I only blah blah blah, so I can just do this, makes us seem like, oh, we have a reason to explain why we are being lazy and procrastinating. So we need to use a different thinking approach to make things better. Instead of saying I only and so, try to say even though I only have this much time, but I can still get something done at least. So for example, I can say, even though I only have 5 minutes before this class ends, I can still start on something. Let's say beginning to brainstorm for your next project, or just read a few pages of a good book and see. So what's more important is our willingness to utilize every minute we get and our attitude towards it. Okay, and my second advice is to take frequent breaks. So a lot of times we keep working a long time and it's kind of become less efficient, but really tired and stressful feeling. So our body and mind needs constant break to maintain our focus. For this, I recommend using the Pomodoro techniques. It is a time management skill developed by someone, sorry, I forgot. And what it means, more importantly, it is basically using a timer to separate your work into intervals, traditionally 25 minutes in length and separated by 5 minutes break. These intervals are called pomodoros, after the Italian word for tomatoes, and it's named after the tomato-shaped kitchen timer that the person who invented this method used to use as a college student. For me personally, I found this method really helped me to improve my efficiency while I was working on things like doing homework and stuff. And then my third advice is to negotiate with yourself. What I mean by that is because the purpose of negotiating with yourself is to help you to realize and identify reasons behind things you do and what your choice of action is, and even alternative actions. So in this way, we are more likely to avoid making impulsive decisions. For example, I can negotiate with myself with relation to the AP exams. So like the AP exams are coming up, I probably should spend some time studying for those APs, like after homework each night. Like, I mean, that's true, but why would I want to do that? Because I'd rather spend time like take more naps and watch more Netflix. And why would I want to study for those APs and stay up late? However, well, why would I do that? Because if I study for those tests earlier during the AP exams days, the week came, I'll be more, I'll feel it'll be easier for me that week, and I'll be more likely to get a 4 or 5, and then get college credit, so I don't need to retake that class in college. And after that, I think, oh, actually it's good, even though I need to sacrifice time for relaxing and sleeping, but I reminded myself that I will gain something greater in the long run. So negotiating with yourself can help you realize these reasons and make you a better decision maker. And my fourth advice is to realize. So anxiety is part of the time management, always in part of time management. Sometimes we might find ourselves really stressful, like about, or even feel guilty about our bad performance of time management. Like, oh, I just wasted a whole afternoon, I feel so bad, I don't want to do anything else. But even leads to a worse situation. So instead of feeling that way, we need to focus on correcting our mistakes and keep being positive. Because realize we're all humans, we make mistakes and we're not perfect. That's why we can practice and improve our time management skills. So it's helpful to realize that, and whenever you make a mistake, keep being positive and going on, and that will make you grow faster in time management skills. And last but not least, my fifth advice is to distinguish what is important and what is urgent. This might come familiar to most of the people, and it's that easy. Say when you're in a messy situation with a lot of things to do, don't panic and make a priority list of what's the most important and urgent thing, and start it from there. And most of the time, this is really helpful and to make you calm and start to being productive. So that's all I have. 5 really simple advice, but really powerful if you can make them into a habit. So I've tried to make some habit during this year, and it comes to me that when I change the way I think and the things I try to utilize every like 5 or 10 minutes as much as I could, I find myself have more time and more control of my time management skill, and put time into things I enjoy and things that is more meaningful. So I encourage you guys to do the same. Take the advice. There are the even so approach, taking frequent breaks, having your priorities, and and negotiating with yourself, and also making peace with your own anxieties. So I hope on the ever-going battle against procrastination, we can all grow in our skills and use them to achieve whatever your goal is in your life. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. Now we have Rishi Wahi with his talk on the importance of transportation.
Hi, so my name is Rishi Wahi, and today I will be talking about trains, really, mainly. So let's just jump right into things and construct a hypothetical. Let's say that I magically created a high-speed rail train that can go from New York to Chicago in about an hour and is free, just for the sake of the hypothetical. What have I just done here? I have integrated the labor markets, the housing markets, and the services markets of these two cities. What does that mean? Well, it means that Chicagoans can live in Chicago and find work and employment in New York. New Yorkers don't have to pay high New York rents. They can live in Chicago, where there's somewhat lower rents, and commute to New York. And additionally, New Yorkers can visit things like the Chicago Museum of Science and Industry, which is really cool, and the Field Museum. And Chicagoans can go visit Broadway regularly. So there's going to be, so from this magical railroad that I've just set up, there's going to be increased economic growth and a lot better quality of life for most of these people. So how does this happen? How does this magical train affect this kind of magical change? Well, it's through a really, actually quite intuitive and natural principle that I like to call a time radius. What's a time radius, you might be asking, Rishi? Well, a time radius is any place that you can go in a specified amount of time. So your 5-minute time radius would be any place you can go in 5 minutes, right? So how does this change things? How does this change the equation? Well, you will go to places more often and more frequently that are more accessible to you, right? Yeah. So let's say that you live 5 to 10 minutes to the mall. You're probably going to go there relatively frequently, right? But what about the museums downtown? You're not going to go there very frequently, right? Because that's a lot farther than 5 minutes. Or a really far away place, like Auckland, let's say, or some other really far away place. You're not going to go there very often, are you? You're not, because it's really hard to get to. It's a long flight, it takes forever, it's just not convenient. How can we apply this magical little principle to my earlier example with the trains? So with trains, you can, with high-speed and even low-speed rail trains, you can live in one metropolitan area and commute into the next. So for example, in California, you can live in the Central Valley in Modesto or Fresno or even Sacramento and commute into Silicon Valley to work. So that way you still have your 6-figure Silicon Valley job, but you don't have to pay high San Francisco rents, right? That's the best of both worlds. Or for example, here in Houston, you could live here in Houston, and if your job changed for some reason, you could commute to Beaumont or Austin or Dallas or anywhere else, and still maintain residency here in Houston. But here in Houston, you may have noticed, we don't have that system. That magical system does not exist here. We instead have cars. Oops, I skipped a juncture. But we instead have a system of primarily cars and highways. And while these cars and highways do have significant upsides, they're great, fun, but they do have a bunch of downsides, several downsides, not great downsides. And so, firstly, when you've got a bunch of people in their cars who all want to go over the same stretch of path, the same stretch of highway, you end up with a thing called a traffic jam, right? I'm sure you've all experienced those. Too many people want to go on the same stretch of road, so there's going to be a jamming effect. This will lead to much increased travel times, right? So travel times are going to go way up, and that's going to make commuting that makes car commuting really exhausting, right? Because not only is it monotonous, it's boring, because you're just sitting in traffic on the 45, the 610, or whichever highway for like multiple hours a day, which is not fun. But you're also, many people will end up forsaking sleep in favor of being able to get to work on time, particularly if they say work downtown. They will get up very early in the morning and leave so that they can beat the traffic, or because they know it's going to take a really long time to get there, right? And that loss of sleep leads to a whole host of physiological and psychological detriments to our health, right? So that's not a good thing. Now, just got the front picture of the train. So, how can we apply what we've already just learned about trains to this? But first, I actually forgot a thing. In Houston, we actually, it's, in case you haven't noticed, because of these really long travel times, because of these really long traffic jams, we end up with significant disjunctions in our city. What do you mean by that, Rishi? You might be asking. Well, it's that theoretically you should be able to go from any part of a metropolitan area to any other part of a metropolitan area, right? Because it's all the same metropolitan area. You're supposed to have great commuting ties. It's supposed to be really integrated. It's supposed to be one big city, right? In case you haven't noticed, that's not the case around here. Galveston, which is within our metropolitan area, is not a thing you can just pop over to. You typically have to make a day trip out of it, right? And like NASA, no one would think about commuting from here to League City, where NASA is, on a regular basis, right? No one, that would just be done, right? It would take forever, right? But it's all one metropolitan area. You should be able to go between all of them regularly, right? Not here in Houston. So how can we, using these things from trains that we've learned earlier, how can we solve these problems? Well, if we were able to cross these geographic disjunctions between New York and Chicago using trains, why can't we cross local disjunctions using these trains, right? So, because trains are faster and they're typically able to take more people in less space, you would be able to reduce travel times significantly for Houstonians, cross these disjunctions, and be better able to explore our lovely metropolitan area of Houston, right? And furthermore, it's not just about being able to better go see downtown, or the individual being better able to go see different places around our city. It's also about the fact that it will improve the economy. It'll lead to economic growth. Because now, we'll be able to go, people up in the Woodlands will be able to go visit downtown, we'll be able to go visit the museum district, the theater district, the restaurants on Westheimer, much more frequently than we otherwise would be able to. And the people who live down there, who would have never thought previously to come up to the Woodlands to eat, to go out, or for whatever reason, they'll be able to come up here and it'll actually be a viable option for them. And so, to wrap up, we need trains. These are the reasons why. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Rishi.
I would not be surprised if you were a policymaker in the next 20 years. Thank you very much for that time. Next up, we have Elijah Araya, who will be speaking about how your social circle influences your future. Please welcome him on stage.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Eli, and I have a question for you. What do you think is the biggest determining factor in our futures? Maybe it's our upbringing or our past accomplishments, such as sports achievements or artistic achievements. Maybe it's our personalities or grades. But while all these things are important, I believe that the biggest determining factor in our futures is who we choose to spend our time with. I've had friends who I've known since the 3rd grade who were good students and on track for a promising future. They were focused on their academics, they excelled in extracurricular activities, but then after knowing them for years, they started hanging out with the wrong crowd and their lives fell to pieces. They themselves weren't bad people, it was just the initial decision to start hanging out with the wrong crowd that prompted them for their lives to take a turn for the worse. These people influenced them to do bad things such as drugs and sex. And the initial decision to start hanging out with these people was the first decision of many decisions that eventually led to their downfall. This all could have been prevented had they just been a little wiser with who they chose to hang out with. A man named Donald Miller, who is a business owner and public speaker, noticed this correlation of how our friends influence our futures through the studying of inmates. He got the chance to guest teach a rehabilitation class at a jail in Texas, and while he was there, he noticed a common link between many of the inmates in this program. He found that they had developed damaging relationships early on in life, and this greatly contributed to them becoming criminals. They were friends with gang members or drug addicts or women who led them down the wrong path, and this was just the beginning of a long string of poor decisions that eventually led to them becoming criminals. Donald Miller learned through this experience that one should surround themselves with people who they want to be like in the future. So he decided to take what he had learned and apply it to his own life. He found 4 other guys in his life who he wanted to be like, and he decided to bring them all together in hopes of learning from them. They were all business owners and they all were intelligent. And when he told them what he was trying to do, they also agreed that it would be beneficial to each of their lives as well. So for the next few months, they met at a cafe every morning on Tuesdays. And eventually they created lasting, wholesome relationships that uplifted their individual lives and endeavors. Their marriages became stronger, their businesses became more well-run, and they became more confident individuals. Donald Miller noticed that he had a solid foundational friend group who he could turn to for wisdom and accountability. This was a very essential part of his life in developing his business and living a more wholesome life. So, because of all these examples we can see how important it is to have a solid foundational friend group with people who we want to be like in the future. Joel Osteen, a pastor in the Houston area, sums it all up by saying, "You cannot hang out with negative people and expect to live a positive life." So, in order to become the best version of yourself, start by hanging out with people who you want to be like in the future. Soon you may find yourself a more driven and effective person. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Eli. Now we have Carol Lua with her presentation on the dark side of humanity.
Okay, hello everyone, I'm Carol from Junior. After the 3 months in Rwanda genocide in 1994, the Hutus, a Rwanda ethnic group, killed about 1 million Tutsis, another ethnic group. Alongside the other genocides happening in modern society, like Jewish genocide, this may be one of the most cruel and yet easily forgotten one. However, this genocide seems to be astounding now. Why? Because these 2 groups of people, they live together and they used to be classmates, neighbors, or friends. But just in one night, the government told the Hutus that the Tutsis were the enemy and they need to kill them all. Suddenly, your friend or neighbor would raise a knife to your head. One of those killers was a housewife, a lone housewife. She talked about how she killed a little girl in her neighborhood. She said that at the time, she had already killed the girl's parents. To spare the girl of the pain of living with no parents, she killed the girl as well. At another time, a group of killers forced a 12-year-old boy to kill his own mother. In this genocide, there were so many events like this. So, how can we, as human beings, make such a horrible mistake? When most of us are facing situations like this, we will always think that this can hardly happen in our life, or at least we won't behave like this. But if you think about it, the life for the Rwandans before this genocide was also pretty peaceful, and they behaved as normal people like us. So how could a good friend, your friendly neighbor, become such a killer within one night? There's a world-famous psychologist who called Philip Zimbardo. He worked on this issue for years, and in the 70s of 20th century, he conducted an experiment called Stanford Prison Experiment. In this, he found some Stanford students and grouped them into prisoners and prison guards. And they have to experience the prison life for 2 weeks. Each person's name and identity were replaced by a number, which also means that they were deprived their own background and identity. And the purpose of this experiment was to observe how the relationship between these 2 groups of people be, and how environment could change people's personalities. But the result was so shocking that it had to be stopped within 1 week. Through this research, we can find how those students adopted the new life of prisoners and prison guards suddenly. All the people got into their assigned role within one night, and people who acted prison guards became brutal and felt happy from violent means, and those who acted prisoners became unconfident and cowardly. Those changes in personalities even existed in their life after this experiment. So how could this happen? Zimbabwe formulated a theory to explain this called the Lucifer effect. This effect states that each person can be affected by surroundings or certain authority easily and then go bad. This can happen to any one of us because those students are just normal people as well. And please remember the time period. This generation of students, they experienced the hippie movement, they embraced love and peace, and they disagreed with war. They were born in the rebel spirit of society, yet they themselves turned violent in a matter of days, just in a simulated prison experiment. You may be amazed by this kind of result, but if you know more about it, you may find some new ways to judge people or understand yourself. And using this knowledge, you can judge people from multiple angles without simply use words like bad, evil, or notorious. And we can find those aspects of society which can cause criminal behaviors, and then to ensure that we are trying to change them, and we are trying to solve the problems. Okay, thank you.
Next, to present his talk, we have Bolurin Ojofeitimi, who will be speaking about his generation. Our
When you think about the younger generation, you probably start to picture a bunch of weird kids wearing weird clothes, listening to weird music, doing weird things they probably shouldn't be doing. And you're right. There's some things about my generation that I'm not too proud to talk about. But as I sat back and thought about all these horror stories that I've heard about my generation, I began to realize these things totally misrepresent our generation entirely. There's a lot of ambition, dreams, goals, ambition, oh, I already said that. Innovation and aspirations in my generation that I'm sure will take our country far one day. So, coming out of public school, well, actually, while I was in public school, I experienced a lot of stuff. And I was exposed to a lot of crazy and wild things that people in an environment like John Cooper might find really unusual, to say the least. So, coming out of elementary school and into middle school, some of my friends started hanging out with some of the older kids. Now, the problem with this, though, was that some of the older kids were engaging in activities that weren't so productive. Some of the older kids were into things like, some serious things like dealing drugs, and some of them would steal from gas stations, and some of them would even go as far as stealing cars. Now, I know this all sounds really wild and crazy, but to us, these things were almost normal. Now, as all this was happening around me, and I was getting older, I started to realize that not everybody in my school was a bad person. From little things like selling gum or reselling shoes, I started to realize that a lot of my friends were building skills that they would eventually use when they would become adults. So, aside from selling legal things, a lot of my friends had aspirations to become stars one day. Some even become basketball stars. One player I can recall especially was named Cameron. Cameron was a star not only on the basketball court, but he also had some pretty awesome looking grades. Cameron would go for early workouts in the mornings and would also stay after basketball practice every single day to get a few extra shots in. Now, Cameron is in 11th grade and goes to College Park and plays alongside Quentin Grimes, who is the number 8th ranked basketball player in the entire United States. Now, coming from a public school to a private school, I believe I have been able to see both ends of the spectrum. With the negative end of the stick, there's usually always a positive end. Now, some of my friends at John Cooper have been doing some amazing things that you only read about in Time magazine. One, for example, is Jaden. This is Jaden's Spotify account. Now, all over SoundCloud, YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify. He's ranked over millions and millions of plays over the music that he creates every single day. And he's become pretty popular in his genre, which is called lo-fi. And people subscribe to him just to listen to his songs. Now, another friend who's doing some amazing things is named Pablo. Pablo lives in our own city and organizes annual walks to raise awareness for human rights every single year. Now, another handsome and dashing, inspirational young man who is doing some amazing things in our own town is me. Now, I have my own YouTube channel where I upload my music to over 10,000 subscribers, and I've begun selling my music not only just a few short months ago. Now, this list is pretty short, but I'm pretty sure it's easy to see that not every single teenager just sits home playing Fortnite doing nothing with their lives. So, to kind of wrap things up, I just wanted to say that I've been exposed to a lot of things, from dealers to entrepreneurs, from criminals to rising basketball stars. And now, through all these experiences, I've come to realize that all the stereotypes and horror stories that I've heard about my generation totally misrepresent us. There's a lot of dreams, ambitions, goals, innovation, and drive. We all have goals and aspirations that we strive towards every single day. And that's why I believe my generation will be the generation to advance the world. I believe that my generation will be the one to change the stereotypes about teenagers, because I believe in the class of 2020. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bolurin. Next, we have Natalie Osmond with her talk about raising boys and girls the same way.
It's pushed on us at birth. Girls, pink, boys, blue. Girls get dolls and ponies, boys get cars and Legos. In most cultures, girls and boys have a different set of fundamental values. Gender inequality starts in homes. As humans, we categorize and assign things. We unconsciously or consciously judge people by class, race, or religion. But in home, it's gender. We focus on girls' looks and ability to be helpful. We focus on boys' athleticism and intelligence. Girls get traditional girl chores, boys get traditional boy chores. There's that saying, girls grow up faster than boys, but they're forced to. We expect girls to help around the house, which later translates into their future when they're expected to take care of the children and the house. We teach girls that their value is to be stable and mature. We expect boys to fix things around the house and do yard work. We instill this idea that we depend on them physically. From a young age, girls are warned, girls can't go to the bathroom alone. They have to be aware of creepy men. Girls have a strict dress code. Girls have to compensate for boys' immaturity. There's also that saying, boys will be boys, which excuses boys' immaturity and lack of self-control. It stereotypes and trivializes unacceptable behavior. If we expect boys to be immature, they will be. But boys will not be boys if they're held accountable for their own actions. And I'm not blaming boys, but society has set different standards for behavior. Society has also instilled implicit bias in all of us. Implicit bias refers to the attitudes and stereotypes that affect our knowledge, actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner. It's seen in our education system. Teachers interrupt or talk over girls. Something I see happen all the time in group work are boys completely ignoring girls' ideas or shutting them down. As adolescents are trying to find themselves, we're telling boys, you have a voice, you have power, and we're telling girls to be quiet. This attitude and implicit bias follows us into the workplace. Male entrepreneurs receive more funds and obtain more interviews. Studies show again and again, in mixed-gendered groups, in male-dominated workspaces, women are seen as less credible. Everyone has implicit bias. Men talk about 75% more than women, but a woman who speaks as little as 30% is seen as overtaking the conversation by men and women. I don't think femininity and masculinity can be erased, but should be instilled in each child equally until they're at an age where they can choose how they want to represent themselves. Instead of assigning pink dolls and blue cars, we should let children explore. We should appreciate girls' intelligence and tell boys it's okay to cry. We should let girls get their dresses dirty and ask boys to help cook dinner. We should let girls pay for the date and let boys enjoy a face mask. Implicit bias is inevitable, but being aware of it is the first step to a harmonious society. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that thought-provoking presentation, Natalie. Now, to conclude our event today, we have Brian Ross, who will be speaking about exploring beyond your comfort zone and finding more about the world around you. Please welcome Brian.
Okay, so let me start this off by saying that I run cross country. By doing that, I've obviously become pretty well acquainted with the roads and trails around here. I can probably navigate Calkins Crossing in my sleep at this point. But after days of running the same trails every day, boredom can start to set in. So last summer, a friend and I were running across the street from Shadow Bend Park, along the ditch, going to what we call the Blue House, which is a, blue house that we use to mark the turnaround. But that day, instead of stopping and turning around, we decided to go a bit further. We didn't expect to find much, but to our surprise, we found a bend in the creek and a trail going left, seemingly into the woods, and we decided to come back later with our bikes to check out what was down it, if there was anything there at all. Luckily, there was. And we found a vast green space running along the length of Bear Branch Creek, only minutes from my house. Yet before that point, I hadn't even noticed it existed at all. That, I think, was my first real taste of personal exploration, and it's safe to say I was hooked. See, before that point, my mentality could roughly be summed up by the saying, born too late to explore the world, born too early to explore the galaxy. There's no more undiscovered islands or continents left on Earth, and though Elon Musk may have launched a car into space, we're still a long way from full-fledged Mars colonization. I was firmly set on the belief that there was nothing new for me to discover. But after that day, I started to question that belief. I had a newfound curiosity about my surroundings. What else was there in the woodlands I didn't know about? What else was there in the world? The answer was a lot. There are over 140 public parks in the woodlands alone, ranging from the massive George Mitchell Nature Reserve to tiny neighborhood ponds, all linked together by an intricate network of hike and bike trails connecting the parks to the shopping centers to the houses of the woodlands. Admittedly, it's not much compared to some other places, but it's still exciting to find new spaces in your own backyard. So I made it a goal to visit as many parks around the woodlands as I possibly could, and then I started to look outwards. The United States alone ranges from snow-capped peaks to desert valleys to mangrove swamps to urban jungles. It's a massive assortment of different environments, and that's one country. Multiply that on a global scale, and it would take lifetimes to explore it all. The best part about living in the modern age is you don't have to even leave your house to get started. I've spent countless hours on Google Maps just looking at distant locales I might hope to visit someday. That being said, getting out is important too, because spending time in nature has been shown to lower stress levels, improve memory, and extend your lifespan. As Henry David Thoreau said, our village life would stagnate if it were not for the unexplored forests and meadows which surround it. We need the tonic of wildness. We require that all things be mysterious and unexplorable, that land and sea be infinitely wild, unsurveyed and unfathomed by us because unfathomable. We can never have enough of nature. Henry David Thoreau. So, to tie it back to what I said earlier, yes, most places on Earth have been explored, but they haven't been explored by me or by you. And sometimes it's not about the destination. As cliche as it sounds, sometimes it's about the journey. Spring break of my sophomore year, my family and I took a trip to Steamboat Springs, Colorado. And on the day we didn't go skiing, we decided to visit a nearby park to see a waterfall. The waterfall was beautiful, but what really interested me was a trail directly adjacent running up the side of a mountain, and I decided to follow it alone, thinking it couldn't possibly go on that far. I was wrong. After miles of hiking past precipitous ledges and gorgeous outlooks, I found myself exhausted, standing on the peak of the mountain, the top of the mountain, and I decided to look up, and I noticed just above me, blue open sky. I had reached the peak. Of course, the trail still went on for miles ahead, but I had no supplies whatsoever, and I wasn't prepared for a long hike, so I had to turn around. But there was something so satisfying about just being up there and journeying up the mountain. I hope to go back someday and hike the full length of the trail. So I guess the point of that was to say, you don't always have to know where you're going, and you don't always have to get where you're going either. Adventure is a lot easier than you might think. You don't have to be Christopher Columbus when you're discovering your own world.
All right, that concludes our event. Can we get another round of applause for everyone who talked today?
Please give another round of applause to Dr. Estrada, who's helped us so much throughout this project. This concludes our event. Feel free to speak to the speakers afterwards and engage in a discussion with them about their ideas if you're interested to learn more.